Former speedboat racing champion Ben Aronoff is now a successful businessman selling boats. Unable to contact him for a while, a man arrives at Ben's workplace one day pretending to be a potential buyer on behalf of his boss. Recognizing the guy, Ben tells him that his boss has already been paid in full and that he doesn't owe him anything anymore. Turned away, the man leaves but lingers outside. When Ben leaves work a while later, however, someone suddenly shoots him. 25 years ago in 1962, Ben had lost his construction business and had been asked by a friend to get out of New Jersey with his family before it was too late. Fleeing to Miami with his wife Catherine and their 3 children, Ben headed to a hotel. While Catherine and the kids settled in for the night, he had then headed downstairs to meet Jules Bergman. As Meyer Lansky's right-hand man, Jules had several connections which made him potentially dangerous. Quite aware of the risk, Ben had discussed setting up on his own again and had been assured of a meeting with Mr. Lansky whenever he was ready for it. Putting together a plan, Ben eventually meets a local real estate lawyer named Shelley Katz. Eyeing the speedboats on the beach, inspiration struck Ben when he quickly hires Shelley before going over to experience a speedboat for himself. With Nocky House for company, Ben then takes his boat out for a spin, leading to his appreciation for the thrill. One impulsive decision to buy the boat subsequently leads Ben to his first race as Nocky's partner. Once the race is underway, its rush takes over as they easily cruise past their opponents. They soon run into trouble, however, when their motor fails. Unfazed by the loss, Ben is satisfied about having found something he can work on. Getting into the business of selling boats, Ben gradually learns about the motors while also participating in races. His first win comes during a race from Miami to Nassau, in which he daringly takes a bet on himself and opts for a dangerous shortcut avoided by the others. Confident about his skills, his gamble pays off when he easily takes the lead to a triumphant win. At a party at their house later, Ben finally meets Meyer Lansky, the financial wizard of organized crime. Mentioning that his nephew, Robbie, loves Ben's work, Meyer then says that Ben's father would be proud of everything he is doing as well. Getting to the point of his visit then, Meyer insists that Ben should not keep his business to himself and says that he should work with him and the others who consider him family. Unwilling to give in to Meyer's demands, Ben is subtly dismissed. While Shelley is surprised to know that Ben knows Meyer, Ben tells him that he doesn't want his business to go that way and reminds him that they have more important things to focus on instead. True to his word, Ben continues to hone his skills and win several races in the next few years. Multiple championship titles lead to Ben having a few records to his name. In 1969, he wins his 7th race of the season, which puts him just another win away from reclaiming the World Championship. Meeting his lover, Contessa, in Monaco one evening, their conversation is interrupted by Shelley asking to speak to Ben. Unimpressed with having to run the business on his own, Shelley complains about Ben's lifestyle choices and confronts him about whether he is trying to run from Meyer. On the other hand, Ben is convinced that his winning races helps their business do better and insists that winning the championship will certainly boost sales. Knowing very well that Ben would not know anything about his own family, Shelley then informs him about his son Andrew leaving for college in a week. Whatever guilt he might have felt then is soon erased when Ben wins the World Championship later that month. Forced to return to Miami next year, however, Ben learns that Andrew damaged his spine in a car accident. His fragile condition leads Ben to decide to come back home to Miami and his family, but he realizes Catherine's resentment. Meeting Shelley in the hospital's waiting room later, Ben informs him of the possibility of Andrew never walking again. When he mentions that his relationship with Catherine is possibly done, Shelley is brutally honest in saying that it was over a long time ago. Learning that they weren't doing great business-wise either, Ben realizes that he is now left with just one thing to save his tattered life, which is to give in to Meyer Lansky's demands. After a closed-door meeting with Meyer, Ben heads home to a sullen Andrew whose mobility is now limited by his wheelchair. Somehow managing to win his trust and cheering him up, Ben takes him to watch the Derby. After the lively match at which Ben ends up with the winning bet, he mentions a stable in Ocala that he can buy for Andrew. As the idea of running it scares him since he doesn't really know anything about horses, Andrew is kindly reminded by his father that he didn't know anything about boats or construction when he started his businesses either. Once Andrew agrees, it lets Ben get back to focusing on the business. While he makes successful high-value deals, things begin turning bad with the arrival of DEA agent Stuart Lopez. With Ben's boats gaining popularity among the narcotics running circuit, Stuart says that he was compelled to pay him a preliminary visit. Unwavering as ever, Ben assures him that his business is completely clean and that they meticulously maintain records of their clients' identities. This fortunately lets him temporarily avert the danger for 3 years until Meyer flees the country to avoid the FBI. Not allowed to get to Israel, however, he is soon compelled to return. When Ben meets him, he happily tells him about having paid back the money he had borrowed before stating that business has been progressively on the rise. Unwilling to release Ben from his claws though, Meyer calls him out and mentions needing to continue using his clean business for the expansions he has planned further. Sensing Ben's reluctance, Meyer reminds him to agree to do his part as per their arrangement. Bumping into Robbie on his way out, Ben addresses him simply as Meyer's nephew. Enraged that Ben does not remember his name, Robbie asks him to watch out as he now has got into racing like him. Continuing his cooperation with Meyer over time, Ben receives a stash of cash as it is discreetly delivered to him. Flying to the Grand Cayman Islands with the money he is led to the bank's vault by its manager. Ben then simply gives the manager a list of 10 account names to equally divide the money into. Back home the next morning, he meets Emily and their son Willie before heading out. Meanwhile, Meyer struggles with an advanced cough before suddenly passing out and breathing his last. About 2 days after the funeral, Ben and Shelley head over to Meyer's mansion for a meeting with the rest of the organization, including Robbie. The proposal discussed during the meeting is the building of a boat factory in the same area as Ben's establishment. However, as Robbie soon specifies, they do not plan on buying the land but expect to be freely given the land by Ben. Already not very interested in the meeting, Ben is exasperated at being bullied into giving up a plot of his land. As Ben makes his way out, Shelley reminds him that since Robbie isn't too focused on the business aspect of things, none of this should seem too threatening. With his last race coming up, Ben decides to think about all of this later before heading out to Islamorada, Florida the next day. He meets George Bush and his friend Nick Brady there before showing them his new boat, the Blue Thunder. While they enjoy their time taking it out for a spin, DIA Special Agent Stuart Lopez is in a meeting discussing the sudden growth of a few business establishments in a short amount of time, including the stable in Ocala. He says that the common thing between these businesses is that they were all financed by loans from the same bank in Liechtenstein where there are strong secrecy laws. Having followed the trail through a bank employee informant who has also provided evidence, Stuart has been led to the Cayman Islands where he says that lots of money coming from narcotics gets deposited into a host of companies. He then reveals that an intricate network is behind everything, currently headed by Robbie Reamer. In 1987, Ben's business is poised for greatness as they receive an order of 100 Blue Thunders from Vice President George Bush on behalf of the Coast Guard of the nation, amounting to about $10 million. The celebration of this news is cut short when Ben walks into work one day and doesn't find Shelley there. Robbie greets him instead and leaves him to deal with Jules, who demands that Blue Thunder be signed over to them. Refusing to do so leads to Ben being attacked and eventually held at gunpoint. Threatened with his life, Ben is bullied into signing over the Blue Thunder to Robbie Reamer's company named Super Chief South. When the DEA realizes the irony that the boats ordered for the Coast Guard to enable them to curb illegal narcotics trade are owned by the nation's biggest smuggler, Stuart is intrigued enough to consider visiting Ben again. Meanwhile, Robbie and his business partners meet Ben to inform him about being ratted out by a European bank employee. With the FBI looking into all operations, Robbie's entire group is being looked at as suspects and he now expects more cooperation from Ben. An enraged Ben kicks Robbie out of the meeting and discusses having to take a few assets of the group under the purview of his company to keep the cops away from them. Unwilling to taint his company, however, Ben insists on having the assets transferred to him personally. But that works against him as he finds an armed Jules waiting for him upon returning home. Getting a worried Emily to stay with Willie, Ben then faces Jules, who is clearly there to warn him, subtly threatening Ben with the possibility of losing his family if he ever stops cooperating with the group. Jules takes his leave. Realizing the urgency of the matter, Ben decides to get Emily and Willie out of Miami. Promising to tell her everything once she is safe, he asks her to get to her sister's place in New York. Packing up immediately, she gets Willie settled in the car before driving away. However, Ben spots Jules following Emily on her way out. Sensing danger, Ben promptly decides to get on the road as well. Jules, on the other hand, continues to urge his driver to stay within sight of Emily's car without making it too obvious to her. What he doesn't anticipate, however, is Ben suddenly crashing into their car. Stopping to check that they've been knocked out, Ben ensures that Emily is safe to continue on her way to New York. Waiting by a public phone later, Ben is relieved when Emily calls him to let him know that they have safely reached her sister's place. When she asks him to join them, Ben says that he cannot put them at risk. Though a bit disappointed, she then asks him why they have to go to these lengths for their safety. Finally coming clean, he tells Emily about having done business with shady people over the years and an ongoing court case which has rattled everyone. The next morning, Dutch Kramer is hired to eliminate Ben and he gets on his way to Miami with his associate. Meanwhile, curious about how Robbie received a multi-million-dollar government contract, Stuart meets Ben. He even goes to the extent of offering to help Ben if he helped the DA's investigation in return. Preferring to keep his cards to himself, however, Ben decides to face the consequences on his own. Eventually, hearing unconfirmed news of Ben getting subpoenaed soon, Shelley reminds him that getting served will keep him safe from Jules or Robbie's attacks, as they wouldn't want to get involved with further police scrutiny. To distract Ben from the impending doom of being served, however, Shelley suggests taking the boat to wait the rest of the day out. Grabbing some cash from his office then, Ben is preparing to leave when Dutch's associate walks in looking for him, insisting that he doesn't owe anyone anymore. Ben walks the guy out. Leaving a while later, he spots the man keeping track before getting into his car on his way to meet Shelley. However, he soon runs into Dutch, who shoots him multiple times. As his life flashes by him, Ben eventually breathes his last,